Prepare to gather for Thanksgiving for the first time since relaxed COVID rules have gone into effect. It's important to not throw caution to the wind.
That's right. In New York, the daily COVID infection rate has remained stable at a little over 2%, but the 28-day average has gone up slightly. New Jersey's daily COVID rates are a little over 1%. Connecticut has the highest daily infection rate at 4.6%. So wherever you're spending Thanksgiving, there are some safety precautions to keep in mind. And Dr. Stephanie Silvera, epidemiologist and professor of public health at Montclair State University, she's joining us this morning with just what the doctor ordered to keep everybody safe. So, doctor, good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you here, by the way, on this Thanksgiving Eve. So there are some key factors, right, for everybody to keep in mind before sitting down around that table once again. Give us a few.
So I think what you want to keep in mind is who is going to be at your table, know their vaccination status. You want to make sure if you are going to ask people to wear a mask, you let them know that in advance. For those who are eligible, that's anybody 18 or older, get that booster shot. There's still time. And then, keep the gathering small. And small is a little bit dependent on how big your house is. Yeah. But we're not quite back at 2019 levels of family gatherings.
But what about masks, wearing masks when you're at a family gathering? What are the mask protocols? Because it kind of can get tricky depending on what circumstance you're in.
Absolutely. I think if your gathering is going to include anybody who's unvaccinated, those individuals should try to wear a mask as much as is feasible, especially if you're going to be in contact with anybody who's higher risk. So somebody who's over 65 or anybody who has a compromised immune system. And I think it's really important to remember that while young children and young adults are less likely to experience severe COVID, they can spread it to guests who are higher risk for hospitalization and death.
So let me ask you about those who are questioning timings of vaccines and boosters, right? Because you had to wait. There was like a wait period until you were really fully vaccinated after that second shot. And then there's the booster, right? So you get the booster. How long do you have to wait until you're considered fully protected again?
So, ideally you want to have at least a week or so to give your body to respond. But if you're talking about a booster dose, those first two shots, or even with the J&J 1 dose, you still have a fairly high level of protection, higher than for most other vaccines. So the booster is an added layer of protection, but as long as you have your full dose, you're pretty safe. Those are pretty effective.
Okay. Well, a lot of people, they're going to be going through airports, traveling through, train terminals to visit relatives for Thanksgiving. So do you recommend that those folks get tested before sitting down for their Thanksgiving dinner?
I think if it's possible, and now testing is pretty widely available, I think it's a good idea to test before you gather, and that includes before travel. And if you can get one of the rapid tests before you sit down, I think especially if you're traveling through those busy transit hubs, airports, train stations. I think the other important thing to remember is that while you're traveling, we should be double masking or investing in one of those N95 or KN95 masks in order to reduce your risk.
Yeah, and so when you brought up a good point earlier about family size. So what would you consider safe in terms of size, or does it really determine on the size of the space?
So I think there's a few factors. So there's the size of your home, ventilation, can you keep the windows open, is everybody vaccinated, and then what are the individual risks? So the smaller your space, the smaller your gathering should be. And I think what we want to avoid is having a lot of people crowded into a smaller space, especially if somebody on your guest list is in that higher risk categories. Again, hand out sweaters, maybe give them a nice gift so that we can keep the windows open and reduce the risk of transmission as much as possible.
Maybe head out to the patio if you can, right?
Yep, if you can. It looks like the weather's going to be a little bit nicer, so maybe we can do that.
I think we're lucking out. Thanks so much, Dr. Silvera, for your time this morning and sharing those safety precautions.
Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving to you, too.